All right, everybody. Hello if you're on Zoom. Hello if you're in the room here. This doesn't work. My name is Tracy Philippi. I'm the outreach librarian here in Cottage Grove. Really happy to see you all here in person and on Zoom for researching your genealogy with the Wisconsin Historical Society. As you're well aware, this program is both in Zoom and in person. So if you do have a question and you're in Zoom, please just put that in the chat and our speaker will address that at the very end. And we will ask her to repeat the question so that everybody in person and in Zoom can hear that. So with that, I am going to introduce our speaker today. Jill Fuller is a reference librarian and stacks manager at the Wisconsin Historical Society Library. She started doing genealogy as a teenager and quickly caught the research bug. She has a BA in history from Winona State University and an MLIS from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Jill is also a member of the Louisa May Alcott Society and is the co-creator of a podcast on Louisa May Alcott's life called Let Genius Burn. So with that, I will hand it over to Jill.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Oh, okay. Thank you for reminding me. I apologize for those who did not hear the beginning. Okay. I'll wait till. Okay. Thank you for those bearing with me on Zoom. I mostly just kind of did a little intro of what we're going to be talking about tonight. And here we go. We're starting off with our first one. So what is genealogy? The study of identity and kinship. I also like to talk about family history as a whole, because sometimes when we think of genealogy, we think of pedigrees and family trees, which are all important. And we're going to talk about those too. But family history is about more than that. It's about collecting stories, not just names and dates. It's about the stories. It's filling in the gap. Maybe if you've been doing this for a while, you hear about filling in the dash. We think of tombstones, filling in the dash between the birth and the death, everything that came in between. So that's collecting things like newspapers and collecting probate records and all of that stuff that really fleshes out a person's life, and really understanding the historical context in which your ancestors lived and understanding how that affected them, their neighborhood. We talk about cluster genealogy, collateral genealogy, all of those really great things. All of that I feel is family history, right? That's where that term history comes in. So genealogy is that study of identity, kinship. The family history really encompasses that, and even more so. All right. Bear with me here. Okay, so we're going to go over a little bit of the research process tonight. For those of you, again, who have been doing this for a long time, maybe this is familiar to you, but we're gonna break it down step by step. Our first step, I'm not gonna talk through these now, because we're gonna go through these as we go. But we've got 4 steps that we're gonna talk about tonight, and how you can use the Wisconsin Historical Society collections and services as you go through these 4 steps. All right, collect and record. This is our first step. First, we want to look at what do I already have. The nice thing about the research process is it's not just something that you go through one time. This happens again and again and again with every ancestor that you're working on, with every family branch that you're working on. Every time that you hit a brick wall, every time that you find out something new, every time that you've learned about a new record, every time that you're starting over with a different ancestor, you're starting this research process again. So you're sitting down, maybe you're working on another family branch, or you're starting with another ancestor. You're asking yourself, okay, what do I already have? So you're starting with what you know. You're looking at looking backwards from the known. You're starting with yourself, and then you're working backwards as much as you can to the unknown. So you're writing, maybe you're taking some family trees or some charts, filling in as much information as you already have. Maybe you already have some documents from your parents or your grandparents that you've already collected. Maybe you have some oral histories. Maybe you've already done some of that work. So you're taking all of those, seeing what information you have, filling in those blanks on those family tree charts or on those pedigree charts. And then you're looking and seeing what you have already, what you've already collected. Sometimes you might surprise yourself and see that you've collected more than you realized. You have more on this ancestor than you thought you did. And then what you're going to do is you're paying attention to those question marks and those blank spaces in the pedigree charts and in those family tree charts, or the timelines, whatever it is that you're creating. You're seeing, where are those blank spaces? Sometimes you may think that you have information on something, and it's not until you start actually writing down what you know and what you have that you see what you don't have, and that's important. These are just some examples of the ancestor charts, family group sheets. A lot of these are available free to download, and I have some links to those on the handout that I gave you. You can use those. I'm also sending a digital copy that will be sent out to those who are on Zoom. So you can download those for free from lots of different places, and you can start using those for family groups or for specific ancestors. Another way to start collecting information and see what you already know and what you already have is to talk to family members. Interview them, record their family stories, see what they already know before you start hitting the books, before you get to the library, before you go online. See what information they already have, because that can be really good jumping off points. Maybe you don't quite know where your great-grandparents came from, so you don't really know, what to plug into Ancestry. But your sister or your cousin might have that information, and then you can use that information for further research. You can also look through family photos, videos, things like that. That's also part of kind of using what you already have from your family to start collecting that information before you ever start doing research at a library or an archives. Okay. Again, there's a little bit more that we need to do before we get to the library, and that is identifying a research objective. This is really important, and it's actually really going to be very helpful for you, because it's important to identify exactly what it is that you're looking for. And I can't stress this enough, because these are the types of questions that I answer every single day at the reference desk or through email from people all over the world who are looking for their ancestors. And it is the best thing that I do. It's my favorite part of my job. But sometimes I have to go back to people and say, what exactly is it that you're looking for, though? Because I will get a question that will say, please send me anything that you have on the Smith family. And it's like, what? Let's narrow that down, because that isn't going to go very far. It's way too broad. I don't know where to start. You probably know something that's really going to help me do that research. So I need to ask some more specific questions to find out what you already know. That's going to help me, find the things that you need. So this research objective, those research questions, that's going to help your research a lot. So we're going to talk about how to figure that out. Here we go. All right, so you've collected all the things, you've written out what you know, so now you're looking for those gaps, those blank spaces, identifying where are the gaps. maybe you've written everything out, you're looking for your grandmother's information, and then you realize, oh, I didn't know, I don't know where she's buried. That's a really big gaping hole on that family group sheet. I had no idea. I thought I knew that, but I've looked through all the stuff I have and it's not there. So, okay, I guess I need to find that. Or maybe you've been putting together some things and you've got some other questions like, well, just today I was helping someone and 3 records had one birth date for a gentleman and 2 other records had a different birth date for a gentleman. And it wasn't until really it was laying it all out and kind of piecing that together. It's like, wait a second. So again, looking at what you have, that's going to lead to further questions. Like, maybe our research objective is, what's his birth date? Can we figure this out? What's going on here? But you need to actually look at what you've got before you can really come up with that question. If you just look at one record and just, okay, that's his birthday, here we go. You need to lay all that out. The conflicting information, that goes along with the third point there. Sometimes you're, again, seeing that conflicting information. Maybe that's your research question, trying to figure out either where that came from, or, maybe you'll never resolve it, but you can at least kind of outline where those records are, and really have all that evidence in front of you. And then it's identifying finally, once you kind of have your research objective, which records are going to lead you there? Do those records exist? We're going to talk about identifying records a little bit. Okay, so here's some sample research questions that I just put together. This right here, which US ports did my great-great-grandparents enter through? Maybe you know that your great-great-grandparents immigrated here, but you want to know which US port. That maybe as you're putting stuff together, you realize, well, that's something I don't know. So that's a good question. That's nice and specific. It's findable. There's records that might exist for it. Those are the types of things that you're trying to, figure out as you're putting together these questions. What was my grandparents' Chicago neighborhood like? So maybe your grandparents lived in Chicago. This one I put together because that's my grandparents lived in Chicago after they immigrated here. So, but that was something I was thinking about. I was like, well, I know that they lived here, but then I saw them on city directory and I saw their address. And I was like, well, what was their neighborhood like? I don't actually know that. I've never asked them that question. So that's more of a historical context question, but it's something that's findable. You can find an address. You can find a map. You can kind of, put that together, that narrative, right? Where are my aunt and uncle buried? Again, that's a very, that's a question that you can find. What was my grandmother's maiden name? These are, again, very specific questions that you figure out once you've seen what you have and then what you don't have. Just a little fun fact, the ship right there, that is the ship that my grandmother came on in 1950. I found that after I was doing some research on her immigration, and I was like, it lists which ship she has. What ship was that? And so that was my research question, and I was able to find her ship on shipindex.org. Which list that's on your handout, just in case you want to find a ship. Okay. All right, so now you have your research objective, you've figured out what you need to know and what you don't know and what you do know. Now it's time to do some research. This is the fun part. It's all the fun part. What am I kidding? This is all fun. Now it's the research part and the providing context part. So here we go. Identifying records. I love this part. This is a great part because the thing about genealogy is that you're asking this question and then you're thinking, okay, what record is going to tell me that? And that's always fun because you're kind of trying to think about time period. You're thinking about location. You're thinking about who created that and why. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But those are the types of things that go into identifying a record because records weren't created with the idea that they were going to be used for genealogy someday. Records were created for very specific purposes, at very specific time periods, by very specific offices. And so as genealogists, we have to kind of, reverse engineer that and think about who was doing that creating and why. And so what types of information were they gathering and how come? And so would this information that I'm looking for be on that record? It's fun. So that's the kind of stuff that I love to do. So when you're identifying the records you might need and where to access them, you're thinking about that. You're thinking about which institutions existed in that location, that time period, and then as well as the history of the record creation. So a lot of, history knowledge is going to be helpful, doing a little bit of digging, a little bit of research. Thankfully, there's tools out there that can help you with that. And I'll talk about some of those in a little bit. So context matters. Time and place. of where your ancestors were living. But not only that, but their gender, their race, their ethnicity, their class, their age, all of these things are going to influence the types of records that were created by and about them, as well as whether or not those records still exist, where they'll be housed, all sorts of different things. So for example, if someone was looking for their 3 Black ancestors in New York, they may be, looking at lots of different types of records, but the one thing that they definitely want to know about is that manumission in New York, those manumission laws, they need to know about laws, right? When did that happen? When did the manumission laws happen? It was gradual abolition into the 1820s. So their ancestors actually could have still been enslaved into the 1820s, which is not something that most people would have thought about at the time. So knowing about the laws would be very helpful. One question I get a lot of is they're trying to find their maybe grandmother or great-grandmother's naturalization record. Well, before 1922, you're not going to find a married woman's naturalization record, because when if her husband was also an immigrant who was naturalizing, when he naturalized, she was just included with that. So she's not going to have her own naturalization record. Children are the same way. So those types of things, knowing that law, those naturalization laws and when that changed, that's really important. So different things like that influences whether or not those records are going to exist, where they're going to exist. For example, some naturalization records are at the National Archives. Some are at USCIS, Customs and Immigration Services. It depends on when the person was born. Anyone born before 1920, their records are going to be at one place. After 1920, it's going to be at a different place. So it gets complicated, but those types of things, you don't have to have all that memorized. That's what, us librarians and archivists are here to help you with. But keeping those things in mind, not everything is going to be necessarily where you expect them to be, and context does matter. So we can't always know the why, but learning different laws, learning all of those different things that would have impacted the record creation does help. Politics, economics, social customs, global events. If you're looking for the burial of someone and you can't find it, well, thinking about which religious institution they went to, but also maybe they moved and lived near their children. What, maybe do some research on where their children went to church. Did their children, was it, which churches were in that area? What are the social customs for that church? Some churches keep records, some churches don't. Baptist churches don't have a central organization that keep records, so those types of things, those social customs. Those vary as well. So it's those types of things that really do matter. Okay, for each record we're considering, is this a primary source? So is this original? Is this a secondary source? Is this written up by someone else? Is it original or is it derivative? So derivative meaning that it was created from an original source. Who created the record? Who's the informant? Informant is very important. Because if we're looking at a death certificate and the death certificate says that the person was born, in Hoboken, New Jersey, but we got to also look who's giving that information. Is it the husband? Is it the child? Is it the neighbor? It'll list who is the informant on that death certificate. So it's, how far removed is it? So sometimes when someone is looking for a maiden name, for example, or looking for someone's birthplace, I'll recommend marriage records. Marriage records are awesome because the person giving that information is going to be the people getting married. So if you're looking for a woman's birthplace or maiden name, she's most likely the one giving that information. A death certificate, it's going to be, one person removed. The person who died is not giving that information. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. You just have to keep that stuff in mind. Can you see the actual image of the record? A lot of times, sometimes on Ancestry or Family Search, we can only see the abstract. Cannot tell you how many times, or the index, so many times where we have, transcription errors, we have misspellings of things. So can you see the actual image? What does the real image say? What other types of records could also exist for this event? So again, with a marriage, there could be a civil registration, but also is there a church record for that marriage? You could get 2 different copies and see, is there different information given on each? That would be really interesting to see. Where's the record stored and what other office could have a copy? So that's also important to ask. Okay, we're going to go real quick through Some of my top records that I suggest for genealogists, many of you are probably familiar with this, and I've got lots of other slides to cover, so I don't want to take too much time on these. If you have specific questions about any of these records, I'm happy to go back and answer questions. So census records. Census records are fantastic. They help us track families and people over time, every 10 years, or if there's a state census, every 5 years, or well, it's the 5 years in between the 10 years of the federal census. Every census is different and asks different things, so it's always worth checking every single one, because you're going to find different information. The informant is always a question on the census. Who's giving the information? Most of the time we don't know. So you're going to see discrepancies on those census records, but sometimes that's fun. You know, it's just, you just never know. But they're a great place to start, especially if you're just trying to gather information on a family, and then you can go from there. Vital records, birth, death, and marriage records, those are going to vary as far as when they were collected, if they're available, if you can get them digitally, if you can even get them at all. Sometimes different states have laws about, you know, more recent ones, whether you can get them based on privacy. So state by state, it's going to vary state by state. At the Wisconsin Historical Society, we have Wisconsin vital records before October 1907. However, if you have a Wisconsin ancestor, and you've checked our database or you've checked with us and we were not able to locate one, it is because it does not exist. And that is because before October 1907, Wisconsin did not mandate the creation of vital records. This was after that date, everyone had to register a birth, death, or marriage, but before that, it was not required. So there are births, deaths, and marriages before that date in Wisconsin that just do not exist. Or the event exists, the records do not necessarily exist. So we will certainly check though, and the vital record index is on our website to search for free, and I put that link on your handout. Newspapers, these are always fantastic, and they can be a wonderful way to give you a jump start as far as obituaries. They can fill in holes on information. If you can't find a marriage record, there may be a marriage announcement or a wedding anniversary announcement 50 years later, and that gives you a wedding date. There can be all sorts of different things. Probate is a great way to find information about death because they would have to have probate announcements about the, you know, the sale of an estate or something like that. Land sales, just fun stories about the community. I mean, you know, newspapers, you can go down a rabbit hole looking at newspapers, and they can be available digitally or physically. So this is a great collection. Directories, at the Wisconsin Historical Society, we have a huge directory collection, city directories, telephone directories, but then of course, don't forget other types of directories, rural directories, which are great for looking at farm and farmer information, church directories. I love church directories because they often give like the history of the church, and then you can see what's kind of going on at the time. There's different directories of societies and clubs. Business directories, so lots of different types. We do collect quite a few of them, not just for Wisconsin, but beyond. Land records, these are also collections that we have, but also beyond that other institutions will have too. Available digitally, physically, or on microfilm. Land records can include maps, a lot of different types of maps, topographical, sandborne, plat maps, but also tax rolls. Tax rolls are fantastic because they often were collected annually, so they can really be a nice way of tracking an ancestor in between the census years. If you know where they were living, you can take a look at their property and kind of what they were paying in taxes. So that's a really nice resource. Deeds, it's a way to track they were buying and selling property. Patents, things like that. So land records can be great to tell you about movement, neighborhoods, things like that. And then of course, there's just another list of other helpful records for genealogy: military records, other court records, probate, immigration records, of course, military records, family and personal papers. Most archives will collect these. And then religious organizations, church records, those will vary as to where they're located. Some churches and denominations keep their own archives, others will be housed at state and local archives, but those can also be very valuable. Okay, we'll talk really quickly about where to locate records before we talk specifically about the Wisconsin Historical Society. So there's a variety of genealogy databases available. Many of you are probably familiar with some of the top ones like Ancestry and Family Search. Ancestry is just a powerhouse database, has so many images not only digitized but also available to search. One of the things, and to kind of keep this short, I'm not going to demo anything, and I don't have any screenshots with me, but I'm happy to speak to anyone about specific search strategies afterwards. But one of the things that I do recommend with Ancestry is that even though they have their main search functions, is that they do have something on their main screen under their search is to go to their card catalog and to browse through their collections, individual collections. So for example, sometimes I will just go to their card catalog and I will go to Wisconsin probate. That's all I'll type in, and I'll find their Wisconsin probate collection and I'll search within that. Because sometimes it'll catch things, or I'll browse things in there that it doesn't catch in the main big search. So it's worth seeing what types of collections they have. Some of them are just browsable. Sometimes you can't search them, but you don't know that if you just search the names. But there's lots of other databases available. Some of these are available at the Wisconsin Historical Society, American Ancestors, which is the New England Historic and Genealogical Society database. So lots of things if you have New England ancestors, this one is fantastic. A lot of records that are not available on Ancestry. Chronicling America, this one's free through the Library of Congress, and this is a lot of digitized newspapers. I put the link on the handout for you. Findgrave.com, most people are familiar with this. It's a great way to find burial sites. That's free to search. Fold3, which is similar to Ancestry, but is a military records database. We offer access to this at the Wisconsin Historical Society. Heritage Quest, and then newspapers.com, which if you are a Wisconsin resident, you get access to this for free through BadgerLink, which is through the Department of Public Instruction. I think I put the link on the handout for you. So if you look for BadgerLink, all you have to do is put in your public library card. So it's just a website you go to, you put in your public library card and you get access to, I think it's also the Wisconsin Archive newspapers or something like that. There's two different databases, newspaper databases that you have access to if you have a Wisconsin library card. So that's pretty great. All right, and then of course, not everything is digitized. This is the unfortunate thing. It takes time, money, staff to digitize records. There are things that are under restrictions, either privacy restrictions, copyright restrictions, just not everything can be digitized. So a lot of times you just have to come to the physical repositories. You can also contact physical repositories. Just the other day, I'm doing a personal research thing and I had to contact Boston Public Library, and they scanned the collection I needed for me and sent it to me through email, and it was great because I couldn't get to Boston. Wish I could, but I couldn't. However, that is what we do too at the Wisconsin Historical Society. We get emails all day long asking us to scan things, asking if we can check an index for a name, asking if we have such and such book title. We check that stuff and do that for free all the time. That is what we do. These are some of the physical repositories that you may want to check, depending on what type of research you're doing. There's government offices, like county courthouses, they have records still. Libraries, archives, historical societies, local and county ones, not just state ones. Churches, as I mentioned, many churches keep their own records, or there's denominational archives. Funeral homes still keep their own records. Not too long ago, I had a patron I was helping, and we could not find this burial record for his ancestor. And I did some digging. I found an obituary for someone else and related to him, and found that they went to this one funeral home, and it had been in existence for 100 years. It was still in existence, found the contact information, contacted them, and they had information about this person's burial. So it's always worth checking the funeral homes. They still have a lot of their records if they're still around, which many of them are. They get bought out and passed along through families. Finding repositories, good old Google, like I did to find that funeral home. But also there's other places, WorldCat, which is like a big library catalog that searches libraries across the world. So it is what it sounds like, WorldCat. I have the link on your handout, and you can search for libraries in particular locations. You can even search for like book titles to see which libraries have this particular item. This is really helpful for genealogy books or other rare books that, you know, might not be at most public libraries. That's how a lot of people find the collections that we have. Another source that is really helpful is the Family Search Research Wiki. If you have not used this, I highly recommend using it. What it is that it is by location. You can search by location, by county, by town, by city, even by country. If you're doing, you know, research on an immigrant and you want to just learn about the types of records available in Poland or which archives to look for in Germany or something like that. You put in a location and it will detail when, you know, let's say for like Dodge County, when Dodge County started collecting, you know, vital records, where the church records are located, where, what's online, which links, you know, it gives you all the links for every, and it breaks it out by type of record, by probate, by land, by everything. And then it will give you a history of the county or the town and it will just send you off. It does it by every location. It's amazing. And it's where that's where I start when I'm doing any sort of research for someone in a particular location. And I need to make sure that I've covered all my bases as far as what types of records are available for that location. So when I was talking earlier about knowing the context of the history of a place, and that's really going to be helpful to you, starting with the research wiki is just a really great place to start, because especially if you've done Ancestry, you've done the big databases, you want to know, well, what else am I missing for researching this particular place? You can go to that research wiki and see, well, oh, there's a link to actually, you know, oh, someone has put together an online index of burials, you know, that I missed, that's not on any of these databases, and they will have linked it. It's updated frequently. It's really well done. I highly recommend it to everyone, and we use it on the reference desk all the time. Archive Grid is another, it's kind of like WorldCat. It's a big catalog of archive repositories. So if there's a particular collection you're looking for, let's say you want to put in your family name, see if there's personal papers donated to an archive somewhere in the United States that has your family name in it. You know, maybe there were letters that, you know, of your family that's been donated to, I don't know, an archive in Alaska somewhere because they were connected to someone else. You can put your family name into the search bar and see which, you know, if it comes up, you know, in an archive somewhere. It searches all the finding aids and catalog records for these archives. So it's a really nice way of just seeing if there's anything else out there in various archival institutions. Okay, real quick, I want to make sure I'm keeping tabs on time here. Some genealogy research tips. I've mentioned a few of these already, so I'll just leave these up here and just kind of breeze through them. Working backwards, try those alternative spellings. Consult collection descriptions. This is really helpful when you're on Ancestry or anything like that. If you're looking at a collection like Wisconsin Probate, scroll down, they'll give you a full description of the collection, and they will include which counties are covered. So the Wisconsin Probate collection on Ancestry, for example, not all counties are on there. So if you're searching and you can't find anyone, it doesn't mean that they don't have a probate. It just may mean that the county you're searching for is not included in that collection. So make sure you look at those collection descriptions. It will give you an exact description of everything that's included and what's not included. Search by location, not just surname. When you're doing any sort of research, because you may find something, maybe something's not labeled by the surname, but by the location. Utilize cluster and collateral genealogy. Basically, what this just means is also look for the people that were around your people. If your ancestor immigrated with someone, search for that person. See if you can find some information about them, and maybe that'll give you more information about your person. Or search for not just your grandparents, but their siblings. And that may be how you find out about your great-grandparents, because maybe they had stuff on their records about them. Maybe your grandparents didn't, but their siblings did. So branch it out a little bit, look at their records too, and see how far back that takes you. Research context, corroborate your evidence. So if you find information on a record, see if you can, you know, confirm that on another record. Don't just take that one as gospel truth. And cite your sources. Always make sure you know where you got that information. This was from a student who came to do some research for an undergrad class, but I got a call on the reference desk the other day saying, I was just in the other day and could you tell me which box and folder I was looking at? Like, no, I can't. I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to come back in. So always make sure you know where you were doing your research and where you got that information from. Okay, real quick, we already talked a little bit about our collections, but I just want to give you a little rundown of if you're planning on coming over to WHS, what to expect. Okay, if you're coming to see us in person, which I hope you all do, if you haven't already, or come on back if you already have. We are located on the UW-Madison campus at 816 State Street. This is a little confusing for people because technically the Wisconsin Historical Society is all over the state of Wisconsin. We have historic sites like Old World and Circus World and Madeline Island and Wade House. We've got sites all over the place. And we also have the museum, which is on the Capitol Square. So this is actually one of our biggest questions is, are you on the square or are you on the campus? We're on the campus. Don't go to the square. You'd have a lot of walking to do all the way down State Street to get to us. Plus, actually on the square, there's nothing there right now because they're demolishing the old museum and building a huge brand new one. I've seen the plans. It's really cool and it's going to be great, but it's going to be a little while before that's done. So you'd get a nice walk around the square, but you wouldn't be able to do any research right now. So we are on the UW-Madison campus. Our library is located on the second floor of the building. Our archives are located on the 4th floor. And our hours and contact information are on our website. So we are open every day except for Sunday, except for, holidays and things like that. But the great thing about both our library and our archives is that appointments are not necessary to view any of our collections. Walk-ins are welcome. You are welcome to come in, walk right up to the reference desk, walk right into the archives. You just have to sign into the archives to request what you need and the archivist will pull it for you. There's some collections that are off-site that do take a day to come. So sometimes I recommend if you are coming from a distance, maybe give us a call and just double check if you know what it is you want to look for. Just double check that we have it in the building. And then there's other collections that are located at some repositories across the state. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But again, we can get them sent to us. So sometimes it's worth a call just to double check about a few things. But otherwise, you can come in anytime. All right, our collections as a whole, we were founded in 1846. So that's the society. So that was before Wisconsin became an official state. We were still a territory when we were already starting to collect our history. Our mission at the Wisconsin Historical Society is to connect people to the past by collecting, preserving, and sharing stories. And note that our mission statement is not to collect people to Wisconsin's past. Our focus here in the library and archives is focusing on United States and Canadian history. So we go beyond Wisconsin's history. We are actually the North American Library on UW-Madison's campus. So we're an affiliate library with UW-Madison. Our collection focus is US and Canadian history. So you may not have any Wisconsin ancestors. It is still worth visiting us because our collection is huge in scope. We collect genealogies, we collect local histories, county histories, for, almost any county you can name in any state in the United States or territory in Canada, and we have histories of them. And so it's definitely worth coming in, seeing what we have, regardless of where your ancestors came from. Sometimes I've tested this by being like, okay, well, my ancestors came from this little Ulster County, New York. And so then I've walked over and like, oh yeah, there we've got like 6 Ulster County, New York, local histories or, whatever. So yeah, it's, we definitely have a very robust collection. In our archives division, we also collect a lot of Wisconsin, we are the state repository as well. So we collect government documents, both in the library and archives. And then up in the archives, we collect Wisconsin records, court records, naturalization records, institutional records, things like that. So we do have a lot of Wisconsin records, especially up in the archives too. We do have what is considered the 5th largest genealogy collection in the country. So that's our genealogy books, as well as our local and county histories, as I mentioned. And we do have the 2nd largest newspaper collection in the country besides the Library of Congress. Most of these are on microfilm. So we have many microfilm readers available. We have a large microfilm collection. But again, this goes beyond Wisconsin. So, I have some examples with me tonight. Let's see. the one that I brought that I like to bring is the Pennsylvania packet, dated July 4th, 1774. 2 days after the Declaration of Independence was signed. So here it is. Here's the paper. So yeah, we have a lot, or no, 1774, 1776. I've got dates in my head. Anyway, it goes through November 1776. So it includes that time period. Anyway, so we have an extensive newspaper collection, covers it with various languages. So yeah, and we send those out on interlibrary loan as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So here's just a little snapshot of some of the things that we have: directories, databases that are available, as I mentioned, for people to come in and see, naturalization records, things like that. Okay, we do have an online catalog. If you do want to view what we have in our library, you can access this from home. It is at library.wisc.edu. The link is on your handout. And you can go to that and take a look by just putting in a keyword, and on the home page you can put in something like Cottage Grove history or Dane County genealogy, and just seeing what comes up. It's not like Ancestry where you would put in a specific name and it's going to give a like genealogy results. This is searching our holdings in our collection. So here's a catalog record example. I put in Cottage Grove history, and here's Cottage Grove's Presbyterian churches, which I did bring an example. I pulled this out of the collection today. So this is the catalog record showing where it's located, that it's here in our library. And then I pulled that out of the collection just to show you. Okay, and then we also have our website. So there are two different links. We have the catalog and then we have the website. So the website is at wisconsinhistory.org. And this is where you can do a little bit more of the name searching. So if you click on the Research Your Family History tab, as I will show you, this is a screenshot of that. This is where you can put a name. I usually just put in a surname. There's a phonetic search box. You can also go to some vital records. You can do some order requests. I'll show you that in a minute. But you can just search for a name and see if there's anything that comes up. Now, this does not cover all of our collections by any means. These mostly just cover some of our indexes that have been done over the years. It does cover the Vital Records Index. It covers some scrapbooks that were digitized. So it's a portion of our collection, but certainly not everything that we have. So just keep that in mind. We do also have online collections too, so that's also available to find from our website. So we do have some things digitized, including a robust Civil War collection, which is really neat. You can browse by regiment if you know which regiment your Civil War ancestor was in. And we do have digitized maps and atlases, and county and local history books. All of these links are on your handout. Finally, we have a variety of services that are helpful to you. So a lot of this you can do from home. You can start out by just taking a look at our website, taking a look at our catalog. But if you come on in, we do have expert staff here that can help you with any of your reference questions. We also offer one-on-one genealogy consultations with either myself or my colleague Rebecca. Those can be in person or over Zoom. They are free and they're 1 hour long. You can go over your projects, the pretty brick walls you have. We can talk about specific records that you might be interested in learning more about at WHS. And then we do have our interlibrary loan service, which just means that if there's, if you aren't able to make it in, you want us to send records to your library or materials to your library, there are a lot of materials that we can send. So we do that as well. We do an ordering service as well. So this is where if you wanted to request vital records, you can get them in person at our library, but if you can't do that, you can order them from us. You can also request an obituary search. We can do that. We'll search in our microfilm for an obituary. If you give us a name and a date, we'll do the same for a newspaper search. And then we can also search our Wisconsin Civil War muster rolls. We can do a Draper manuscripts copy order. That's a big collection that we have. And then we can also do a non-population census search. Those are like the agricultural censuses, the mortality schedules. industrial schedules for Wisconsin, because those are only on microfilm, those are not available on Ancestry. Ancestry did not digitize those. So those we can do. Any of that is available for you to do if you came into WHS, but we offer this for those who are not able to make it in, so we will do that too. Again, that's all available on our website. And finally, there are archival materials that are available only, well, not only, but they're housed at various archival repositories throughout the state. So while our genealogy books and microfilm and everything is at the library, we do have archival manuscripts that are at these repositories. So for example, if you are doing research on a Green Bay ancestor and you want his naturalization record, that will not be housed at our building. That will be housed up at UW Green Bay. We can get it sent to us. It'll take a day or two. Everything gets sent. We do this every single day. We have vans going back and forth. But the reason that we do this is A, because we would not have enough space at our building, and B, because then the records that were created near the area where they came from are staying in the area where they came from. And it makes it just more accessible to the people who live there. So while we do try to make it as accessible as possible by doing the transit system and interlibrary loaning it between us, we do have it housed at various locations. So these are all the locations where those are located, and in the catalog it will note where it is located. So it'll show which area research center it is at. So you can search for, any record you want, and it will show up in the catalog, and then it will just show which location. So you can always contact us and ask how to get it sent to our building if you're planning on coming in and want to view those and don't want to, drive up to Green Bay. So we'll get that sent for you. Okay, the other thing we try to do is we try to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to learn more about genealogy. So we do presentations and tours. Presentations like this one. We also offer webinars throughout the year with professionals who can speak on a variety of topics. We have 2 upcoming ones that I put on here. We have others that are coming up throughout the year. So those are always available, and we try to make, as much possibility for people to learn about genealogy as we can, because we think that that's just something vital. So we have that link on your handout too. And we offer a newsletter too, so that people can continue every month. We send out an email with just tips, things that people can learn about genealogy. We send a collection highlight every month. I think the one we have coming up this month is cemetery abstracts and indexes. We're doing a little meet the staff where everyone's putting their favorite ice cream flavor. And then I do a little behind the scenes photo. So you can kind of see what goes on behind the scenes and what staff is up to and what we do. So if you're interested in joining that, you can go to that link. I think it's on your handout too, and you can sign up and see what goes on behind the scenes at WHS and also learn a little bit more about what we have in our collections. All right, the final step on the research process as we're winding down here is sharing your research. You've done your research. You've been working hard, you've been filling in those gaps, you've been learning, you've been going to the repositories, you've been online, you've been putting in all the names, you've been finding and corroborating your evidence. And now the thing that you want to do is you want to share your research. The big one is organizing as you go. This is going to help you as you look to share your research. Documenting, again, where you found things, where they came from, citing your sources, but also organizing your files, either physically or digitally. This is a big one. Be consistent with your naming conventions, making sure that you're naming your files in a way that makes sense to you, but is also the same for every project or for every ancestor, so that it's easier for you to find things as you go. This helps with sharing, because if you've downloaded something and maybe you want to put everything on a thumb drive and give that to your nieces and nephews or to your grandkids, they want to know, you want your files to be named a certain way so that they know what they're opening, and it's not just everywhere, so making sure that you're naming things as you go so that it makes sense. You're organizing your folders, either physical folders or the digital folders, so that it makes sense. Maybe you're using a cloud account of some kind like Google Drive. Again, you can make folders in there and you can name your files and making sure that it makes sense and that it's organized. Doing it all after the fact is a lot less fun. So just doing it as you go is what I recommend. So again, yeah, you can, and then as you organize things, you might be wondering like, okay, do I make one folder for one family and then little folders for every person, or how do I... Honestly, it doesn't matter. Just however you do it, just make sure it's consistent and it makes sense for you. So you can do one big folder for one family and then smaller folders for different surnames, or you can do folders within that by chronology or by location. So here's, all of the Essen, all the part of the family that were in Essen, and then here's all the part of the family that was in Dane County, and then, and then within that you do it by surname. However it works for you, however it makes sense for you, just as long as it's organized and it's consistent. And then you can create a family history project. It can be big, it can be small, it can look like whatever you want it to look like, but your family will thank you for it. And honestly, if you're going to all this work and all this trouble, you might as well. Most people do some sort of a family tree online, Ancestry or Family Search you can put together family trees on there that are nice and organized and allow you to connect with people. But there's other things you can do too. Like I said, you can put together, Google Drive folders that you can share with your family. You can write a book. It doesn't have to be fancy, but you can self-publish a book. You can put something together that's written out with all the stuff that you've done. Right here is our, we collect books. This is how our genealogy collection grows. We collect books that people have written. Every year we do a family history book award for anyone who has written a book, family history book about Wisconsin ancestors. This was our award winner last year, Rebecca Shamblin. You can build a website or a blog, if writing a book is just way too much, you can just put together a blog or a website or something, somewhere where you can put everything. Somehow, sharing those skills, those interests, sharing it out with your family, they're gonna thank you for it. Because it's worth collecting, it's worth putting all this effort in, but then just doing it for you is not worth it. It's all about sharing it with the people in your life. So there's lots of options out there for what you can do. All right, so that concludes the presentation. But I would love to answer your questions. So I'm gonna just leave this up here with my contact information. Well, actually, I think I do have. WHS asked me to put this on here in case anyone wants to do the little survey thing. I think it's mostly how you heard about it. So go ahead and do this too. But I'm happy now to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
Okay, I heard the Lake Street parking ramp is gone, so where can we park?
Okay, parking questions, we get these a lot. All right, so the Lake and Johnson ramp is still there. It is yes, but there's the State Street ramp on Lake Street.
Okay.
It is gone, is under construction. It will be reopening. They are building it, I don't know, they're rebuilding it. So the one behind it that you can enter on Francis Street is still there. So you can get onto it from Francis Street. So it's kind of the part that was behind it. It's a bit smaller. Lake and Johnson ramp, which is just one block over towards Johnson Street, is still there. That's a university lot, but it is open to the public. So it's just one block farther away. Helen C. White Building sometimes has public parking, and that's a little closer to us, but it's usually full by, midday. And then you can try for street parking. It's like 2 hours. So yeah, but I would try usually I recommend Lake and Johnson, the ramp. Yep. And we have no timeline on when the other ramp will be back open, but we can't wait. It'll be great when we do.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Newspapers.com.
Yes.
No, I do have a library card.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do I have to be at the library to,
No, you can access it from home.
you can,
Yes, so if you're doing the Badger link, is that what you're asking? Yeah, yeah, so if you were to access newspapers.com, like if your library had a subscription, you would have to be at your library, but Badger link, the Department of Public Instruction's Badger link has this agreement with newspapers.com, which is incredible, where you can access it from home. through their website. I know, through their website, you just have to put in your public library card number. Mhm.
Except you can only access the library version of
Yes, that is
newspapers.com,
true.
which is not the full version of the newspapers.com.
It is
We'll
true.
tell you if it is in the full version, whether they have it or if it's in the full version.
It is true, yeah. So any public library, even us, any library institution is not able to offer the full newspapers.com, like the personal version, like you would get if you purchased a personal subscription. And that's just, again, we were talking about before, like rights and permissions and things like that. They just don't allow institutions to offer full access to things, which is very difficult. So for example, the Green Bay Press Gazette on a personal subscription, you can get up to 2025. Like they have the full run of the Green Bay Press Gazette, and they don't have it on the library version. Or if they do, it's like up to like 1890s or something, which is just so frustrating for those of us who are trying to
But they
help
do-
people.
they
But
do Weekends from time to time.
okay, so there
if
we
you
go.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Weekends.
right, so it just depends also on just which papers you want access to. And I don't want to denigrate the access to newspapers.com because there is still a lot on the library edition. It really just depends on what you're looking for and which papers you need. There is still a lot available, which is great. Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
lot in Chronicling.
And Chronicling America's, yes.
Has a ton.
Yes, Chronicling America, that's the other, it's the free one through Library of Congress, exactly. And that is one that we have a partnership with, and we have been digitizing papers, and that gets sent to Chronicling America, so we are that's updating constantly. And so we have a lot of Wisconsin newspapers available there, but it's nationwide, so yeah, Chronicling America is another great one, and it's free from home too. Mhm. Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question about the newspapers and other records.
Yeah,
I heard something recently and it kind of went by so fast that I didn't really absorb it very well.
okay,
But they talked about cutting off funding for things, reference materials that went to libraries and such. For, with the feds cutting off everything, that was one of the things they talked about, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure what all they have cut off.
so are you referring to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS?
I don't know, I just heard this quick thing that went by.
Okay, yeah, so Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS, is one that has been under threat of getting federal funding cut to it. So Badger Link, which offers newspapers.com, is something that is funded through IMLS. There's a lot of other things that is funded. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe possibly that the project that I was just talking about, where we send newspapers to Chronicling America, that might be funded through that. Don't quote me on that. I'm not privy to all of that, but there are a lot of things throughout state and local libraries and museums that are funded with that money. So those programs, I don't know what would happen to those. I can't speak to that, but that is something that if that's what you're referring to, that is something.
I
that-
suspected this.
Yeah, I do know that was
They
very
didn't even,
recently.
I
Mhm.
don't know that they said specific.
Yeah, that was the one that very recently that's being, that was being, because it's one of the, programs that it might get funding cut to it, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, so definitely worth looking into if that's something that you're, want to support or want to, look into further and learn more about is what, it's called, IMLS. Mhm.
And it may be that when you go to Badger Link, you're gonna find it's not.
Yeah, I don't know what,
longer
right.
functioning, Yeah.
I do know that Badger Link is funded through that, so yeah, so I don't know what the ramifications of that would be if funding was pulled, but I do know that, that is one of many things, and,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Well, I know your Civil War Museum is wonderful. I've been there many times, but do you have records for the people who served in all wars?
So are you talking about the War Museum on the square?
That was,
So-
or.
Or the Veterans Museum?
There's a veterans one there too, I know.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so the Veterans Museum is separate from us, and they have their own separate archives, which is fantastic, and we partner with them quite a bit. So we don't really collect military records, for other states. Unless it's published collections, you know, of like indexes of like Civil War soldiers, you know, that someone has published for a particular county. So, you know, I was just looking you know, there was like Civil War soldiers of something county, Texas, and that was a published book, but we don't have records, like original
I
records.
know my family's from Wisconsin
Mhm.
and their archives burnt from World War II.
Yep, this is in St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we do have, I can speak to that though, right, so the St. Louis fire in the 1970s destroyed service records for, most World War I, World War II, you know, and beyond. However, what we do have, and this might not help for your ancestor if it was a World War II ancestor, but what we do have is we have, service records for Wisconsin World War I soldiers. And we are one of the only states, maybe the only state that has copies of World War I service records, Army service records, because of that fire. And the reason is because Wisconsin made copies of everything before it got sent, to, the National Archives. Or,
You also have the, United States, the Spanish-American War with Cuba.
I don't believe we do, but I would have to double check. Yeah, original records, I'm not sure. Yeah, so. That would be something we could search in the catalog and see what we have. Yeah. Any questions, online or, no, okay,
I have one
yeah.
question. Does the library offer any type of, book repair or book binding services or anything like that?
That is a great question. We do get asked that quite a bit, but unfortunately, we do not. Yeah, we do have a conservation lab, but that is mostly primarily for materials that will go on exhibit or things that we're doing in-house. We do, I think, have a few names that we will, or maybe not recommendations so much, but like links that we will send to people for people who do that privately. But yeah, we don't do that in-house, yeah. Mhm. All right. Any other questions I can answer or? All right. Well, thank you all very much for being here tonight. It was a pleasure. I hope you all can make it to WHS. Good luck on all of your research and your genealogy. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions. I do have some business cards if you want to take them, but I think actually you might not have to. My contact information is on a handout too, so feel free to contact me if you have any additional questions or anything comes up. But yeah, thank you all for coming out tonight. I appreciate it.
People on Zoom say thank you and they really enjoyed it.
All right. How many were on Zoom?